All right, hey, good morning, folks. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Today is Sunday, November 6th, 2022. This is your morning tropical update, where we continue to track Invest 98L in the Southwest Atlantic Basin. This is the system on your screen in the center, north of Puerto Rico and Hispaniola. This broad mess of clouds, showers, and storms is trying to organize, consolidate, and eventually will be moving west towards the sunshine state of Florida and potentially the southeast U.S. as a whole, where some big impacts are expected this week, and we could potentially have at least a nor'easter, a tropical storm, or even possibly a hurricane on our hands over the next couple days. Now, this is late in the year. I get this November, and we're all done with this. We had Halloween, and we're completely over it. But I got to stress that we actually have a significant threat on our hands for at least the state of Florida, if not some follow-on impacts to parts of Georgia and the Carolinas over the coming weeks. So we're going to talk mostly about Invest 98L today. There isn't much else going on in the tropics. We do have this other system by Bermuda. This is moving away. We don't really care. It very well could be named. The Hurricane Center just rolled over 11 o'clock, and it doesn't look like they named this, so I guess it's fine, whatever. But it could be named at any point in time this afternoon, then eventually wind shear carries it away, whatever, who cares? The main player we're looking at today is Invest 98L, the system centered here just north of Hispaniola in Puerto Rico here this morning. So again, you can see here the Hurricane Center up to 90% chance this is going to develop. I think we're going to have a potential tropical cyclone on our hands sooner than later, because they're probably going to need to get some tropical storm watches up for parts of the Bahamas. And if they need to put those watches up, but the storm hasn't formed yet, they'll do that. So that's probably what's coming. But either way, we do have some stuff to talk about. So let's go ahead and get into it. We'll show you the satellite presentation of 98L this morning. And we have what's still a hybrid kind of mess on our hands. So what this isn't a normal tropical wave. This isn't like a little wave that comes off Africa and doodles along across and picks up ocean heat and becomes a tropical storm. This is a winter type branch of the jet stream that kind of dipped down into the western Atlantic, and it's kind of got a lot of upper level features to it. So it's trying to start off its life like a winter type low pressure, but it's over water. And so what's going to happen over the next couple of days is going to start to lose that upper level support, and it's going to start feeding off that ocean waters. This is what we call a subtropical storm, or a hybrid storm, where they kind of have aspects of both to them. Now, in the end, if I put you in a tropical storm and a subtropical storm, you might be like, well, I would got wind in my face and it was wet. I don't really know the difference, but there are some differences as far as the actual impacts they provide and the size of the storms. Typically, subtropical storms are bigger. They kind of have broader wind fields, etc. But this is what we're looking at this morning. And right now, it's not named yet. It's not an organized anything yet. It's just kind of hanging out here. Very sloppy this morning. You can see there's a lot of dry air inside the system. This little arc cloud moving out is a good indicator of that. A lot of wind shear still. A lot of the Sierras blow off pretty strong. And we don't really have what looks like a really terribly well organized inner core yet. I don't think there's a lot of backside wind on this yet. So we probably still have what is probably an ill-defined surface feature, if any surface feature, but it's probably got a good mid-level rotation to it, and it's working on feeding off this ocean water, which is in the mid 80s, probably 83, 84 degree water, and it's going to see less wind shear over the coming days. So I'm going to go ahead and show you just the broad brush of what this looks like. We'll show you the GFS to show you the timing and everything else. So this is set for today. You know, you have a messy, weak low, broad mess of a system, not much else going on. Okay, as we go into Monday and into Tuesday, we'll stop you here at Tuesday morning, early Tuesday morning. The GFS shows that we probably have something consolidated into an organized storm by Tuesday off the Florida coast to the east of the Bahamas, east of Florida. This is probably a weak tropical storm, potential tropical storm, subtropical storm. It could be whatever, but it's probably going to have winds around like 40, 45 miles an hour, and it's going to be kind of like partially organized. All right. What's going to start happening is a strong high pressure is setting up over the Appalachians in the southeast U.S. Okay, this is going to push the storm to the west because this high rotates clockwise. So this high is set up like this, and the high rotates in this direction. So what happens is the storm moves up, and then it gets blocked by the high, and it begins to turn towards Florida. It's going to have to turn in response. It can't. There's no way for it to get out to sea right now. So it's going to go like this, come up, and then it's going to start to bend back towards the Florida coast. It's kind of an odd track, but that's what we're dealing with because of this late in the season, storms can do all kinds of silly stuff because the steering patterns are all out of whack and chaotic and whatever. All right, so you have this developing subtropical or tropical storm. It's moving off to the west. The GFS shows potential for some significant strengthening. You can see here that high is beginning to move overhead, and the storm is now moving this due west path towards the coast of Florida. Now, the question here is going to be how much wind shear and how much dry air affect the storm. We think there's going to be enough to offset anything strong. We don't anticipate a Category 2, Category 3, Category 4. We don't expect a major hurricane out of this, but we could have a big storm because it's going to be a big storm. It's going to be a physically large storm, and it could be somewhere between that strong tropical storm or mid-grade tropical storm or strong tropical storm all the way up to potentially a Category 1 hurricane. That's all on the table right now. The GFS is showing us a Category 1 hurricane, but computer models like to run back and forth. The European model at the same time is not nearly as strong. It will depend on dry air and it'll depend on shear. But you'll have some kind of organized storm moving towards Florida, moving in sometime on Wednesday or Thursday, and then eventually it's going to recurve back towards sea as a strong upper system comes in from the west, coming from California. That's going to come across the state this week as we're about to see a cold pattern flip to the US, eastern US. That's going to pick this thing up and take it out to sea, wherever it happens to be, Thursday, Friday, even Saturday timeframe. So what are the impacts here? We're talking about a couple days of this. This is going to be a long-term, prolonged impact. I'm going to show you the European model because this is illustrating this pretty well. Okay, so let's go back in our time in our heads back to Monday now. We're back to Monday. Tonight, Monday morning, we'll take it to Tuesday because this is when this in earnest gets started. So on Tuesday, we've got this developing storm east of the Bahamas, okay? But you already have this high pressure setting up over the southeast U.S. In between is this strong fetch of northeast winds. You see these black bars, how they're all pinched together really tight? That's called a pressure gradient. That is basically taking your finger and putting it on a water hose. You get more pressure and more speed of the water, and this is going to pinch these northeast winds and focus them as a fire hose right over the state of Florida and through parts of the Carolinas and Georgia. This is what we would call a quote-unquote nor'easter. So a nor'easter event begins really on Tuesday for much of Florida and the eastern U.S. coastline, south of North Carolina, and the storm being tropical in nature kind of influences and sort of adds on to that. So you've got this hybrid of what would be a regular nor'easter and a tropical storm. So that's why this is going to be such a high impact event. But this starts on Tuesday. So this is Tuesday morning, Tuesday early afternoon. You're already going to have the potential for clouds, rain, coastal flooding, beach erosion, high waves, high winds. All that stuff's going to start on Tuesday night, Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday evening, especially in Florida. And then the storm is still east of the Bahamas at this point. Okay. And then Wednesday, it creeps closer. Thursday, it's kind of starting to make landfall. And again, the European model shows us kind of a mid-grade, broad tropical storm, a lot of impacts, but it's not like super intense by any stretch. The GFS at this point is forecasting a Category 1 hurricane. So we have some wiggle room, and we don't really know how that's going to play out yet. But regardless of, we're into Thursday. We're already 2 full days into this. You still have all these ridiculous east and northeast winds pushing into the state. You got a lot of beach erosion. You got rainfall, all that stuff. And then if you're down here, you have full-on tropical storm conditions, right? And then the European shows us too. It begins to recurve and takes us back out to sea, and then it could rake up the coastline and cause a lot of impacts to parts of the Carolinas, Georgia. This wind out of the south. This is going to cause coastal flooding, et cetera, et cetera. This is Saturday. I mean, we're talking, just again. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Oh, and now it's finally gone on Sunday. So 4 or 5 days potentially of some high impact weather for the eastern U.S. So I'm going to skip all the other mumbo jumbo for now. We can get into it later. The GFS again shows some other stuff. There's some timing with this trough coming in. This is Thursday. You can see this big trough over the east central U.S. coming in. This is what's going to pick up our storm and move it back out to sea and kind of throw it back away. So it's not going to stay around forever, but it's going to have a slow approach, and then it's going to probably race off at the end of the forecast period. GFS and European ensembles also show this well. The European is always trending weaker right now. This is very common with these models. The European always starts weaker, the GFS starts stronger, and they kind of meet somewhere in the middle. So I think a mid to high end tropical storm is probably your best bet right now, given the fact there will be some wind shear and a significant amount of dry air, especially early in the forecast period. But that's going to be offset by some favorable upper level divergence and warm water. The waters are still 83, 84 degrees. So I think that's your most likely outcome, but a category 1 hurricane not out of the question at this point, especially for central or south Florida. So folks on there need to be paying attention. Uh, Hurricanes in November are rare. I think Kate was the last time in 1985 we had a hurricane landfall in November in the U.S. And the state of Florida on the East Coast has been very lucky for a number of years. I believe 2004's Francis and Jean were the last hurricanes to hit the east coast of Florida. So, don't sleep on this, especially on the east coast here. And if even if you live like north, say you're in the northeast Florida area, this is going to be a nasty nor'easter and potentially still have some tropical storm conditions this week. So, southeast Georgia, don't sleep on it. The Carolinas, don't sleep on it. It's going to be a ride. We'll quickly show you some impact potential. This is going to change, so I'm not going to go in the weeds with this either. The GFS showing you if we have a hurricane, the potential for that swath of hurricane force wind gusts in much of central Florida, maybe just north of Lake Okeechobee. But again, this whole swath could shift south or it could shift north, so don't fall in love with that. There's also some worlds where if that trough is way early, the storm could recurve before Florida, and this could kind of shift this corridor from here to like this. So if the storm maybe parallels the coast, so don't fall in love with that yet either. But look at the potential for wind gusts, 45 miles an hour to the north and south, 50, 60, 70s if it becomes a hurricane. The European model showing less development, but again, showing that potential for wind gusts well over 50 miles an hour at the coast, in the 40s for most of the state, which will be persistent. This will last for days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Those persistent winds can still bring down trees and things like that just because of how long they push on something, not so much how hard they're pushing on something. And rainfall forecast, these are going to change as well. I don't like the WPC forecast right now. I think it's underdoing it a little bit, but potential for 2 to 4 inches of rain from much of the coast, and definitely higher amounts where the center of that tropical low may be. And the GFS showing a little bit more believable totals, but generally in that 2 to 4 inch range throughout the rest of the week and into next weekend, with some amounts higher. I think these will come up, but remains to be seen. The rainfall from this may be more steady than heavy, but it's going to still be a high rainfall event. So decent news on the rainfall front, at least. If we do need some rain to catch up, we're starting to get a little dry. But you don't always want it in the form of a nor'easter or a tropical storm this late in the season. So we need to keep watching this very closely. We're probably going to get potential tropical cyclone tonight or early tomorrow, I would imagine. This could be developing at a pretty steady rate as it approaches Florida. It could be a strong tropical storm. It could be a hurricane. We do not have the exact landfall point, nor do we know exactly how this pans out. It could actually come up, scrape the coast, and maybe not actually make landfall. It could just come up the spine of Florida. It could push into the Gulf and then recurve into the Big Bend. Um, in any case, at least a strong nor'easter is coming for much of Florida in southeast Georgia and the Carolinas, and potentially, very likely, at least at this point, some truly tropical storm force impacts and potentially a hurricane force impact could be coming for some of the state of Florida. So that's what I got for you guys today. We will be monitoring this on the page. We will have more updates. I will be all over this as it happens and as it goes through, as we do with all the storms. So until then, keep watching, and we will have more as we have it. So until then, guys, thanks for watching. Have a good one.